So when we talk about crisis comms, we usually mean the communication we do when the organization we work for is in crisis. But there's another kind of crisis-driven communications, and that's the kind you're forced to do when there's a global crisis. 2 years ago, the crisis was COVID. Now it's the war in Ukraine. And soon it might be an energy crisis or a more acute climate crisis. As communicators, we need to be able to navigate these crises, both for the organizations we work for and for our insanity. So I'm glad you've joined our panel today, and I hope it helps you to navigate a little bit these crazy times.
Obviously, on a technical side, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control was monitoring very carefully right from the first reports from Wuhan. And there was a constant exchange with member states on their intelligence, their data, and the sort of scientific side of it. But from a communication perspective, we faced quite a big challenge. But we wanted to very quickly get out there on social media and to communicate people, because we know that where there's gaps in information, this is where misinformation can thrive. This is where people start trying to find their answers on search engines, trying to get information from friends and family who maybe don't know everything. WHO did this very, very quickly. And I think this was a really good lesson right from the beginning, actually. The importance of listening to people, to seeing how people react. We saw there where there were gaps, where there were still questions, and we could go back to our experts and answer these questions that were really pertinent.
How challenging was it to navigate this line between your professional job and your obligation to communicate the truth and facts and get it to the right people at the right time with your personal worldview?
During the Brexit debacle, let's call it, I found that incredibly difficult to know where to position myself as a Brit working for an EU institution. And I made a conscious decision not to talk about it on social media. And then I had friends and family saying, but how stupid, you're the person that knows firsthand. What are you doing? And it's something I regret and something that I've sort of learned going forward. So when COVID struck, I took it upon myself, which is also something that, as you say, I've been doing for a while, to use the platform that I have to sort of personalize the messages that we were putting out. So for example, vaccination is something that I believe very strongly in. And I thought it was good to post pictures when I got my vaccines to show it was the social norm, to make it something that everybody can do. It's very easy. And then this is something I've been trying to do. I think number one is that tonality matters. I think we are all checking twice before we post across all the DGs to make sure that things are appropriate, but also that we're saying things that are useful to the people that are out there. Again, a lot more conscious of who we're communicating to. I think this is something that we've maybe learned through the pandemic.
I had no ties, no political ties to the president at the time or anyone else. I knew practically nothing or very little about my country. I had learned everything while I was working at the embassy. I certainly didn't know anything about the politics behind it. But I thought that it was a time when everyone who loved their country should help. I was absolutely convinced that the biggest problem Croatia had at the time was an image problem and a communications problem. And even today, now when I look at what's going on in Ukraine, I'm thinking to myself, they won the communications war within like 24 hours. And we lost ours in 24 hours. They insisted I start on 1st of May, 1995. And very stupid, naive me thought, when I thought, how come they're asking me to start on a day that is a non-working day? And the only answer I came up with, very, very stupid answer actually from my part, because I hadn't been at this level in politics, was that, they thought the 1st of May would be great because it's a non-working day, so it would be a little bit more quiet. But that was not the reason at all. All men. And after about 2-3 minutes of their conversation, I realized that there was a military operation that had started that night at 4 a.m. or 5. So 3 hours before I started my job. 2 takeaways from that as a communicator. do make sure you have all the background. And then one of the most important thing is, if you do not have 100% trust in the person you're going to be working with, and vice versa, if you don't know that they trust you 100%, do not take the job. What saved me in the end was the fact that I didn't know, and that ignorance and the fact that I was oblivious to the political games behind, in the end, saved me from a lot of stress, a lot of personal issues, and so on.
So if we start from the EU side, how well do you think they're communicating over the last month?
I think actually pretty well. And to their credit, I think the EU institutions have improved a lot when it comes to communication in the past years. And we heard it from Katie at the beginning. There is a lot of resources and increasing capabilities being put into the institution's communication efforts. And traditionally, it's been the European Parliament that's been the best communicator for fairly obvious reasons, given the elections and its democratic nature. But the European Commission itself has really upped its game. I think it was kind of like a 9/11 moment on the 24th of February, when everybody was in complete and utter shock that whatever we feared actually happened. And I saw that, at least if our LinkedIn feed is a telling sign or it's a reflection of the general mood, I think at least for 1 week, I didn't really see any other messages or any other statements or anything else put out there. And then after about a week or 10 days, when the initial shock was kind of digested and it wasn't so unexpected, then slowly other things started coming back. So I think it's, again, you spoke a lot about with Natacha about common sense and decency and just thinking about it as a human. So I think in that initial period, yeah, it's probably, if there's such a crisis, such a hit, you probably don't want to advertise your sneakers or your latest position paper.
As you mentioned, Richard, we are representing all the national postal operators, public postal operators. We have 55 members, of which 3 are in conflict at the moment, not 2, 3. We immediately realized that we had to be very careful about how we communicate internally as well as externally. So first we focused internally on what the members were saying, what the members were doing. We were approached by a lot of our members and asked, how are we helping? What's the situation like in Ukraine? And so we established a sort of a team, a crisis team. But I want to show you a bit of what the reality means for us, postal operators.
So do you have a problem from your Belarusian and Russian members when you share this stuff?
No.
Okay.
Nothing so far.
Not so far. Okay. That's great. That's great that you're able to share these. I mean, they're very concrete stories of what they're doing on the ground.
Yes, we've got volunteers, and these are just concrete stories. So what we've done is we've issued a statement, we've seen our statement, recognizing the efforts of all the postal operators on one side, but instead of tweeting from us what they're doing, we retweet, we share what they are doing on the ground, and what they're, we have reports, we monitor what they're doing, and we share that on social media. So this is the reality that we are dealing with right now. But to communicate in that detail, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to separate that emotion and your personal emotion from seeing this every single day.
Yeah.
But we know that we have to do something.
Yes, it's time consuming, but it's also very rewarding, because if you do engage, you are able sometimes to change people's minds if you do it really on a one-to-one, very simple, basic level. And I always think we forget what social media is about. There is the word social there. So posting is fine, but if you never reply to people who criticize or who have a different point of view, if you don't engage in a discussion, what's the point?
I just wanted to say that communication has never been easy, you know, whether it's someone you saw on the street you want to talk to and you feel shy, or it's someone you have to call to tell some bad news. It's not easy. And especially crisis communication. And the fact that you all came here either to talk, either to listen, means that you would like to improve the communication, means that you would like to do something about it, means that you're worried about the topic. And me and trust me, as many millions of Ukrainians really do appreciate it. Thanks a lot for joining.